You're watching the Sports and Political channel of LB. If you're not a subscriber to this channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and share these videos on your social media platforms. So, for this video, this could be strictly about the news. And we had a lot of crazy stuff go on during the course of the week. But I'm going to focus on three stories in particular that you might have heard of or you might not have heard of. And we're going to start by this woman here by the name of Karika Wortham. Now, this woman, who's 32 years old, she was a former Amazon manager who was sentenced to 16 years in prison for stealing $9.4 million worth of stuff. And in that, she took that money and bought a mansion and a Lamborghini. That's right. This woman here stole almost $10 million from Amazon. You didn't think that Amazon was going to track that and find out who was responsible for $10 million being missing? So I'm going to get into this press release coming from the United States Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Georgia, where the mastermind of a $10 million Amazon fraud scheme was sentenced to 16 years in prison. Karika Wortham, and along with 6 individuals, was charged in connection with this scheme. The defendant abused her position of trust at Amazon to steal nearly $10 million from a company based on a brazen fraud scheme involving fake vendors and fictitious invoices. She then committed new crimes while on bond, even creating a fake dismissal document purporting to be from the court, and that she included the full signature of the chief U.S. district judge, all for the purpose of misleading a franchising company about the status of her criminal charges. Her prison sentence recognizes the magnitude of her fraud and serves to protect the integrity of the courts and the justice system. This individual stole millions from a business that employed her, exploiting not only their trust, but our nation's financial systems. According to the U.S. Attorney Buchanan, the charges and other information presented in court, Karika Wortham abused her position at Amazon to submit more than $10 million of fictitious invoices for fake vendors, causing Amazon to pay approximately $9.4 million to Wortham and her conspirators. From about August 2020 to March 2022, Wortham worked as an operations manager at the Amazon warehouse in Smyrna, Georgia. In her position, Wortham supervised others and acted with the authority to approve both new vendors and the payment of vendor invoices for Amazon. Wortham, who was the leader of the scheme, provided fake vendor information to unknowing subordinates and then asked them to input the information to Amazon's vendor system. Once the information was entered, Wortham approved the fake vendors, enabling them to submit invoices. Wortham and her co-conspirators then submitted fictitious invoices to Amazon, falsely representing that the vendors had provided goods and services to Amazon. Wortham approved the invoices, causing Amazon to transfer millions in fraudulent proceeds to bank accounts controlled by her and her co-conspirators. Wortham conspired with others, including Brittany Hudson, in the scheme, who was in a relationship with Wortham and owned a business, Legends Express LLC, that contracted with Amazon to deliver the packages to customers. Hudson allegedly worked with Wortham to submit millions in fictitious invoices to fake vendors to Amazon. Wortham and Hudson purchased an expensive real estate and a luxury cars, including a $1 million home in Smyrna, Georgia, a 2019 Lamborghini Urus, a 2021 Dodge Durango, a 2022 Tesla Model X, a 2018 Porsche Panamera, and a Kawasaki ZX636 motorcycle, all with fraudulent proceeds from the scheme. Wortham also recruited co-conspirators Demetrius Hines, who was in loss prevention at Amazon, and Laquita Blanchard, who worked as senior human resource assistant at the company. Hines and Blanchard provided names and social security numbers to Wortham to create additional fake vendor accounts. Blanchard provided names of relatives and associates. Hines provided stolen personal identifying information that he purchased from Jaquan Frazier, who in turn allegedly purchased the information from Darrell J. Burgo, also known as quote-unquote Fleet. Hines and Blanchard were paid in fraudulent proceeds. Hines also recruited Jamar L. James Sr., another operations manager at Amazon's location in Duluth, Georgia, into the scheme. Like Wortham, James allegedly approved fake vendors and fictitious invoices, including after Wortham left Amazon in March 2022. Wow. Boy, this scheme involves a lot of players. A lot of players involved in this scheme. And they really thought they was going to get away with that. While on bond, Wortham and Hudson committed new criminal conduct that resulted in the revocation of their bonds. So you was out on bond and still committing crimes, huh? You really thought you was untouchable. This is a classic case of greed catching up with you. You got too big for your britches, you got greedy, you got caught, and you're so brazen that you continue to commit more crimes while you're on bail. This is gross and raw, unadulterated stupidity what's going on. In January 2023, they were working with CRU franchising company, the Oba Hookah Lounge in Midtown Atlanta. During the due diligence close to the deal, CRU discovered and asked about the Amazon fraud charges against them. In response, Wortham and Hudson allegedly lied to CRU, claiming that the Amazon-related criminal charges were dismissed. The two then emailed fraudulent court documents to CRU that purported to show dismissal of the charges and contained a forged signature of Chief U.S. District Judge Timothy C. Batten Sr. and forged seals and signatures of the clerk of the court. Oh, oh my goodness gracious. Hudson also allegedly emailed CRU doctored bank statements and personal financial statements that fraudulently inflated the balances in her accounts to support the franchise deal. Karika Wortham, also known as Karika Dupree and Karika Young, 32 years old, of Atlanta, Georgia, was sentenced by Chief U.S. District Judge Timothy C. Batten Sr. to 16 years in prison, to be followed by 3 years of supervised release, and ordered to pay restitution to Amazon in the amount of $9,469,731.45. More than $2.7 million in fraudulent proceeds seized from multiple bank accounts, the residence of Smyrna, and the vehicles purchased with these fraudulent proceeds were forfeited. Wortham was convicted of the Amazon fraud charges on November 30th, 2022, after she pleaded guilty. She has also been indicted for defrauding CRU and forging the signature of a federal judge and the seal of the court. So those charges remain pending. On June 20th, 2023, a federal grand jury indicted Brittany Hudson, 37 years old of Atlanta, Georgia, and Jamar L. James, 47 years old of Calera, Alabama, for conspiracy, wire fraud, and money laundering. Hudson for forging the signature of a federal judge and seal of the court. Darrell J. Burgo, 32, of Lawrenceville, Georgia, was charged in the same indictment with conspiracy, access device fraud, and aggravated identity theft. Those charges are pending. For their roles in the scheme, on November 30th, 2022, Demetrius Hines pleaded guilty to wire fraud conspiracy. On June 27th, 2023, Laquita Blanchard pleaded guilty to wire fraud conspiracy. And on June 27th, 2023, Jaquan Frazier pleaded guilty to misprision of a felony. Judge Batten will sentence D3 defendants at a later date. So the case was being investigated by the Secret Service. You get what you get. I feel nothing for you. You stole over $10 million, and after you left your job to go to another one, you lied to them and forged the signature of a federal judge? Are you out of your fucking mind? You can't make this stuff up, y'all. You can't. There's no way you can make this stuff up. No way. Stupid is what stupid does. And then the next article we're going to talk about this situation right here, where two teens murdered a teacher over them getting bad grades. Can't make this stuff up. So these two individuals they beat a Spanish teacher to death in a park, and they hid the body under tarp. You hid the body under a tarp after beating this woman to death? This is crazy. This is probably one of the craziest stories I've read yet. This is one of the craziest stories I've read yet. So one of the two Iowa teens who pleaded guilty to murdering a Spanish teacher over a bad grade was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 35 years. According to the Associated Press, CBS News, and USA Today, so the guy that got sentenced is the guy in the center. He goes by the name of Willard Miller. He and another teen, Jeremy Goodale, 18 years old, that's the guy off to the left, pleaded guilty in April for the first-degree murder of the death of Spanish teacher Nohema Graber, 66, that's the woman off to the far right, who was the mother of three. District Court Judge Sean Showers said that he found that the intent and actions were sinister and evil. Those actions result in the intentional loss of life in a brutal fashion. There's no excuse. The horrific actions led to the death of Nohema Graber, and her family will never be able to fill that void. Both Miller and Goodale were charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit forcible felony in connection with Graber's 2021 death, and the teens were set to be tried as adults. As part of a plea deal, prosecutors recommended 30 years to life in prison for the possibility of parole for Miller. Goodale is scheduled to be sentenced later on this year. Prosecutors recommend that he will be eligible for parole after 25 years. So this is how this thing went down. On November 2nd, 2021, Miller met with Graber at Fairfield High School to discuss his grade, which he said was lowering GPA, prosecutors said in a criminal complaint. This is obtained by the Des Moines Register. Later that day, Graber drove her van to nearly Chautauqua Park. She went for a daily afternoon walk. Prosecutors alleged that Miller and Goodell, who were both 16 at the time, stalked her and learned her daily routines and then ambushed her at the park. Less than an hour later, witnesses saw the van leaving the park with 2 males in the front seat. The following day, Graber's body was found in the park under a tarp, a wheelbarrow, and railroad ties, where authorities said the teens had dragged her body and hidden it. Graber's van was abandoned on a desolate road, and the teens used to walk back to town. She suffered inflicted trauma to the head. That's what killed her. Miller initially said he had nothing to do with the teacher's disappearance, and later he knew about it but did not participate. Okay. So you tried to say that you knew about it, but you didn't participate. You had nothing to do with it. Okay, that's already a red flag going up. That's what you told the cops? Okay, sure. Now, Goodell told authorities Miller first struck Graber with the bat and that he was on the lookout. Prosecutor said Goodell said he struck her with the bat after the first failed to kill her, prosecutor said. Before he was sentenced on Thursday, Miller apologized to Graber's family for the killing and accepted responsibility. Okay, look, you killed this woman over a bad grade. A bad grade. Well, guess what? Where you about to go? They're going to test your ass when you about to go. Because see, in school, you get a lesson and a test. But where you're going to get tested, and then you're going to get your lesson. I'm not even going to read the apology because there's no need. Several of Graber's victims read victim impact statements that accused Miller and Goodell of the recent death of Graber's husband, who had cancer but postponed his treatment because he was depressed over his wife's murder. So this woman's husband had cancer, and y'all worried about a bad grade. Y'all went out and killed this woman? You can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. All over a bad grade. Well, guess what? You about to learn. You about to get fucked with the long dick of the law. Because that's unacceptable. Whatever happened to, or I get a bad grade instead of going out playing video games and doing whatever else that's caused my grade to be bad, why don't I study harder? Why don't I just find someone who actually knows the material and have them tutor me? Instead, we're going to kill the teacher. But see, there's a deeper thing that's going on. There's a deeper thing that's going on. When you're a parent or when you're a teacher and you fail to hold these reprobates accountable for the stuff they do, you only embolden them. Because they ain't just get to this spot overnight. This was over time where they were doing little stuff here, doing little stuff here. Oh, Johnny, don't do that no more. And you keep on warning him, and you don't hold these little reprobates to account, and they only embolden them until they do something the way they can't turn back. Do they still have summer school? I'm pretty sure they still have summer school. Pretty sure they do. But no, y'all want to go out there and kill a woman because she gave y'all a bad grade because you guys couldn't hack it. This is why we have that college admissions scandal that went down with Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin and all these other A-list or B-list or Z-list celebrities. Because their stupid ass kids couldn't hack it. They want to dole out hundreds of thousands of dollars, in some cases in the millions of dollars, just so their dumbass kid can go in some prestigious school. Meanwhile, you have a black kid who actually did it right, got all the good grades, and still can't get accepted. I remember watching that on an episode of American Greed one night. But nevertheless, y'all got what y'all got. I don't feel nothing for you. And to all to your parents out there that want to cry over you going to jail for however long, I feel nothing for them too. Because in my opinion, had your parents done their job, you wouldn't be where you're at. Because I knew when I grew up and I did something wrong, my mama was on my ass. She didn't play no games. My mama didn't play no games. If I was out here acting crazy, doing stupid stuff, oh yeah, I was getting jacked up on sight in front of everybody. She had to come to the school because I was acting a fool. Oh yeah, she was putting a belt on my ass in front of all them kids. She had no problem embarrassing me in front of the children because the way she saw it, I was embarrassing her from having to take time out of her day while she's working to come to school because I couldn't act right. But now, if you do that, then you got these so-called concerned parents want to call DSS and call the police and do whatever, or because you're abusing the child. So parents can't be parents no more. Meanwhile, they're not even paying attention to their own kids. That's why when I see people cussing their kids out and all that, and I see somebody going up to that adult and be like, hey, you can't curse your children out like that. What's wrong with you? I'd be wanting that parent to smack the shit out that other person who's that's so-called concerned citizen. You don't worry about my children. Let me worry about my children. You mind your own goddamn business. Because I don't need your kids robbing my kids. Now, next story I'm going to talk about, this is the final story I'm going to talk about tonight. And my news notes and anecdotes edition. I'm trying to do this once a week on the weekends. And this is the Proud Boys. Proud Boys in DC 2020. All because their deity lost the election and tried to cheat. So December 12, 2020. I live an hour away from DC. This was a day I was going to go to DC. I was going to have a good time. I was going to go out, hang out, do whatever. You know what I'm saying? And when Trump and his supporters was going to go to DC on that fateful day, I was like, man, fuck this, man. I'm not going to DC. There's no way I'm going to DC because I know if I go up there and somebody put their hands on me, it's going to be some ungodly actions that's going to take place. All because their feelings leader lost the election. Those white supremacists went up to DC and they went fucking crazy. They went crazy. They were ripping off Black Lives Matter signs. Yeah, all right. You're right, JVB boy. Yeah, Proud Boys ran by a Mexican. There was I hear vandalizing churches. They were beating up innocent people as they were walking by. People out here working long ass hours trying to go home. They crowded a black girl and beat her up in the street. These asswipes crowded a black girl and beat her up right there in the middle of the street. You had a man got stabbed up there. There were like 33 other people got injured during that melee. So you had protesters and counter protesters up there that night. So good luck going through the streets of DC on that fateful night. Violence broke out in the streets after far-right groups clashed with counter-protests in the aftermath of a march by conservatives protesting against a victory by Biden. The trouble flared as darkness fell and crowds began to disperse in the wake of a largely peaceful demonstration on Saturday by Trump supporters who alleged, without evidence, that the November 3rd election was tainted by fraud. Groups of pro-Trump Proud Boys protesters and Antifa counter-protesters brawled in the city's downtown streets, and although police used pepper spray on members of both sides, the rivals regrouped and violence continued sporadically. 4 people were taken to the hospital with stab wounds with potentially life-threatening injuries, according to the Washington Post, which quoted DC fire spokesman Doug Buchanan. Police said 23 people were arrested that night. An estimated 200 members of the Proud Boys, the violent far-right group, had joined on marches earlier on that Saturday near the Trump Hotel in the Capitol. Mixing with church groups who urged the faithful to participate in Jericho marches and prayer rallies for the defeated president, the Proud Boys contingent wore combat fatigues and ballistic vests, carried helmets, and flashed hand signals used by white nationalists. They also shouted insults at rival Antifa protesters and burned Black Lives Matter flags, but police succeeded in keeping the factions apart until the evening. So that was back on December 12th, 2020. Fast forward this porno flick to 2023, about a few days ago on July the 6th. And the Proud Boys, because they're already bad enough that their fearless leader Enrique Tarrio is doing time in the bean for this incident. The Proud Boys have to pay a $1 million fine. $1 million fine. All because you hitched your wagons to Donald Trump. Now, is Donald Trump going to pay your fine? Huh? Is Donald Trump going to pay your fine? Because he and his surrogates and his legion of dimwits, dunderheads, doodlebirds, and donuts was pushing the election lies. Yeah, JVB boy, that's all. That's all they had to pay. All they had to pay was $1 million. Leaders of the extremist street gang, the Proud Boys, were ordered to pay more than $1 million in damages to the historic black church in D.C. after they vandalized during the demonstration back on December 12, 2020. Meanwhile, a January 6th defendant was arrested last week near the home of former President Barack Obama and accused of threatening to detonate explosives. So there was a Trump supporter who was trying to bomb Obama's house. And June saw a spike of arrests of January 6 suspects, but scores more who have been identified to the FBI by volunteers remain free. They had to pay that $1 million fine to the Metropolitan African Methodist Episcopal Church. The judgment resulted from a lawsuit filed against named and unnamed members of the extremist street gang by the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law on behalf of the church. The judge issued a default judgment since none of the defendants in the action appeared in court. Yeah, because one of them are in jail. Enrique Tarrio is currently in the pokey right now. So it'll be a little difficult for him to show up for that civil trial. Just saying. The attack against Metropolitan AME was an attempt to silence the congregation's voice and its support for life, for Black life, dignity, and safety, said Damon Hewitt, president and executive director of the Lawyers Committee. It represents just the latest chapter in a long history of white supremacist violence targeting Black houses and worship. These attacks are meant to intimidate and create fear, and this lawsuit aim was to hold those who engage in such action accountable. But just $1 million though, like JBB Boy said, that's all? Y'all should be raking that name and asses through the freaking coals. Should have been going for at least $10 million. So I'm just asking a question. Donnie go pay that fine for y'all? Y'all took the bullet for Donnie. Donnie go pay that fine for y'all? Because you know this, he got, let him tell you, he got millions upon millions. So what are you gonna do? Huh? Y'all gonna pay that tell Donnie to pay that fine. Tell Donnie to pay that fine. The same way y'all was pressuring all them people out there in DC that night. They can't even go home after working long hours for whatever they're doing without you guys targeting unsuspecting Black folks and beating them within an inch of their life. Tell Donnie to take that fine. Now, since Enrique Tarrio is locked up, who is going to be the next in line to step up and talk to old Donnie Boy about that $1 million fine? Y'all need to find Donald Trump and give him that bill, just like how a female kicks down the barbershop door while her baby daddy's sitting there getting a haircut and handing her that child support bill. That's how y'all need to be the old Donnie Boy. But no. You tried it. Y'all tried it and it blew up in your face. So I feel absolutely nothing for you at all. I feel absolutely nothing for you. Now, I want to get to this last story here. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. It really means a whole lot to me that you guys are tuning in. Now, hold on. Apologize. What's up, Mark Wonderlick? Salute to you, bro. Shout out to my man Mark Wonderlick in the building. Last story. Hold on. January 6th defendant arrested near Obama's house. Had guns and 400 rounds of ammunition in his van. Jesus Christ. The guy you see here in the picture goes by the name of Taylor Toronto. Now, he was one of the individuals, one of many individuals, who decided to storm the Capitol on January 6th. Hey, Mr. Toronto, were you at the Capitol pissing and shitting everywhere too? Huh? I'm just asking the question. I don't know. So I have to ask that question. Were you one of them ones that was pissing and shitting everywhere at the Capitol? So how did this guy get out on bond? How was this guy able to get out on bond? Coming from NBC News, Trump supporter who stormed the Capitol wearing a Make Space Great Again hat, really? Had 2 guns and 400 rounds of ammunition in his van when he was arrested Thursday near former President Barack Obama's house. The federal prosecutor said in court that Taylor Toronto, a 37-year-old man first identified by online sleuths in August 2021, and this is the one thing that social media is good for. If you're out there, you're going to get identified. Somebody knows you somewhere. A friend, a rival somewhere. Yeah, I know that motherfucker. That motherfucker stole $15 from me. He borrowed $15 from me and gave my money back. Fuck that motherfucker. This is his name right here. Yeah, because you got friends, family members, and bitter rivals that's out there praying for your downfall. So if they see your picture on a most wanted poster somewhere, whether it be at a barbershop, whether it be at a Piggly Wiggly, whether it be at a Food Lion, or at a Target, somebody know you. Somebody go identify, yeah, I know that motherfucker. Yeah, me and that dude went to high school together. Somebody go point your ass out. You see why these Karens out here getting fired from their job when they're sitting up here projecting crimes on the black folks, or they out here putting on theatrics. They out here calling the cops for bullshit ass allegations and all that. And these Karens quickly get identified. People are able to point out where they work, where they live at, all that shit. Next thing you know, the company is left with no choice but to fire these Karens. But back to Kevin, right? That's his name. I know his name is Taylor Toronto, but I'm going to call him Kevin because that's the male version of a Karen. It's Kevin. This man had a machete in the van he appeared to be living in. His van has been parked in the D.C. jail in recent weeks, and he appeared at protests in support of other January 6 defendants. Noting that he lived in the van, a prosecutor said Toronto had nowhere to go. He faces 4 misdemeanor counts in connection with the January 6th, and that's why. So basically, the policies that's out here in the country, basically, if you get charged with a misdemeanor, you're not going to get held in prison. So that would answer the question I asked earlier about why is this guy still running the streets? If you're charged with a misdemeanor, then you're not going to get jailed with a misdemeanor. A felony, however, will get your ass thrown in the pokey. Prosecutors say that Toronto has been in Washington to take House Speaker Kevin McCarthy up on his offer of letting January 6 defendants review security footage of the Capitol riot relevant to the cases. Toronto had posted recordings of phone calls he made trying to get access to the footage on his social media. Well, guess what? You are not Tucker Carlson. You won't get nowhere near that kind of access there, buddy. Toronto has acknowledged entering the Capitol on January 6th in social media posts and questioned why authorities had not arrested him. Wow. That's a pretty interesting question coming from you. Wow. Toronto has showed up at Obama's residence on Thursday after former President Donald Trump posted screenshots on his Truth Social platform that featured a purported address of Obama's home in D.C. Toronto account reposted Trump's post. But when these politicians or these politicians, as Tori Rain always alludes to, when these politicians talk of this stuff about a two-tier justice system, that is used in bad faith. Because the same people that sitting up there running their mouth about a two-tier justice system, you don't see none of them getting held to account for the crimes they commit in deference to their deity, Donald Trump. Has Marjorie Taylor Greene gotten prosecuted for anything? No. Has Lauren Boebert got prosecuted for anything? No. And she posted stuff on January 6th about where the politicians going to be at to these motherfuckers. Has Josh Hawley been prosecuted for anything? No. Has Ted Cruz been prosecuted for anything? No. Has Jim Jordan, the same guy who was so quiet about what would happen at Ohio State when it came to his wrestlers, right? Because when it came to anything else, he is the Republican Party attack dog. But when it comes to them kids at Ohio State, when them kids was telling him about what the team doctor was doing, that motherfucker was quiet as a church mouse. Has he gotten prosecuted for anything? No. And they're sitting up here gaslighting you about a two-tier justice system. Because the truth of the matter is, all those lies, all that bullshit that was putting out there in the atmosphere, and you white supremacists, you racists out there, y'all got served the proverbial red meat. And y'all slurped up that slot that they were serving y'all. They ain't going to jail. Name one, what? Them motherfuckers ain't went to jail, but you did. All you people that went up there, there was a story about a woman who was 69 years old with breast cancer, flew from Idaho to D.C. to partake in that bullshit. She going to jail. And all she did was carry out that slop that she was being served by them politicians, all the aforementioned names. Her white privilege couldn't have saved her. Her breast cancer couldn't have saved her from doing that time. But no. Trump and his surrogates and his Foot Clan members get to sit up here and continue to run them up all this bullshit out here, and yet not one of them has faced any kind of music when it comes to that incident. Not one of them. Yeah, sure, Trump has had indictments on him and all that, but has he really gotten in trouble for the stuff he said? Has he really gotten in trouble for the stuff he did? Hell, if I did the same thing that clown did, you think I'd be running the streets right now on this YouTube channel telling you about what the fuck the deal is? Is it right? Because if you think I end up in jail and you think I'm going to end up being your sex toy, well, motherfucker, you got another thing coming. Back in March, more than 100 suspects on the FBI's wanted list for January 6th has already been identified to the FBI but have not been arrested. The suspects were identified by volunteer online researchers. The June arrests included Toronto and Hollywood actor Jay Johnson. Yeah, because there was all kinds of people there on January 6th. There was doctors, lawyers, former police officers, active police officers, former military, active duty military, You name it, from the CEO of a large corporation to the zookeeper at a DC, to the local zookeeper at the National DC Zoo was there that night. You name it, they were there. So hopefully, and I'm saying that with a pinch of salt, hopefully these people will finally get their comeuppance. I thank everybody for tuning in. I'm gonna try to do more of these videos here around this same time on Saturday evening. Make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe, ring that notification bell whenever I go live. Shouts out to the LDBC. This your man. Scream at me. All right.